Hi, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Reinvent and Rediscover. I'm your host, Ava Laurie, and this week we're going to be talking about the importance of community and the loneliness epidemic, and kind of my solutions, my advice regarding loneliness. We often hear how important it is to feel a sense of belonging and how isolation is more likely to lead to depression. But I kind of want to dive into what does that really mean? Recently, I have felt such a strong desire to feel more of a sense of belonging to my community. I feel like the job that I moved to this state for and living alone when I first moved to New Jersey, it's really made me feel isolated. All of the friends I am close to are scattered all around the world at this point, and I do not have close connections. I don't have family members here. Like I said, I lived alone for a year when I first moved here, so I kind of had to start from scratch. And what I observed, especially considering I'm introverted and I really adore my alone time, I need my alone time, but I found that it was too easy for me to kind of crawl into a corner and isolate myself. And while it often brought me energy and brought me feeling like myself and being able to really define who I am and work on myself, on the flip side of that, I did feel really lonely at times and had a hard time feeling connected to my community, had a hard time feeling as though anyone even really knew I existed, if that makes sense. I know that sounds dramatic, but when you live alone and you kind of just work, you go to the gym, you go to the grocery stores, you go to coffee shops, you do your own thing and you carry on. A lot of times you feel as though no one even knows that you exist in your community. Nobody recognizes you. There's nobody to speak to. Nobody would really know if something happened to you or if you stopped showing up to wherever it may be. And like I said, I know that sounds dramatic, but I had that thought a lot. And I remember somewhere within the first 2 months of me living alone, it really hit me because I went shopping at Trader Joe's. And if you go to Trader Joe's, most grocery stores, they have this section where you can get like single protein bars or like nutrition bars, like granola bars of some sort. And I was getting some single Bear Bells to try, and I picked up caramel cashew. And when I got home, I ate it, whatever, I carried on, and I could feel tingling in my throat. So I immediately was like, there was probably peanuts in that protein bar. I'm allergic to peanuts. So stressed out, read the package out of the trash, and sure enough, there was peanuts. I didn't know what to do because usually this would be a situation where if I'm living at home, my parents would know what to do or take me to the hospital if I need to or get me Benadryl. They would watch me to make sure I'm okay. And I know I can have a little bit of peanuts or something. It's not gonna kill me. But it's not good, right? So I freaked out and grabbed a bottle of water, started chugging water, and then I drove myself to the emergency room and I sat outside of the emergency room because I didn't want a big medical bill and just kind of sat it out for a bit. And then I realized there was no symptoms progressing other than my scratchy throat. So I got Benadryl from Walgreens, drove home, took the Benadryl, drank more water, and carried on. And it was in that moment when I realized there's no one to tell. There's no one to take care of me. There's no one to show up for me. There's no one here to make sure that I'm okay. And that emptiness that I felt was just kind of a holy moment. You know what I mean? And while I still spent a lot of time alone after that, I realized the importance of having people around you who care about you. Um, I think we take it for granted a lot when we do live with, our lifelong friends, our childhood friends, or you live with or close to your family members. But when you make the decision to move yourself away from everyone you have ever loved, everything you have ever known, it's very isolating, and it can feel also defeating when you don't want to start over. You don't want to make new friends. I already have friends. I already have so many people that I adore in life. And I started to feel like, what's the point of making new friends? I miss my old friends. I miss the friends that I already have. But the truth is that wherever you go, there you are. You know, I cannot change the fact that all my best friends do not live here. My family would never move to New Jersey, I can promise you that. And I made this decision, so at the end of the day, I have to create a life for myself here, and I have to create a sense of belonging that I do not feel from circumstances. I feel like when you grow up in one place and you stay there, circumstantially, you already feel a sense of belonging because that's where you're from. Of course, you belong there. You were born there. Um, but when you choose to move to an area, and especially, I got some pushback on a TikTok I posted a while ago talking about moving to where I live. I live in New Jersey, but outside of, very close to New York City. Okay. And there was this comment that was like calling me a gentrifier and that I should go back to where I came from, basically. And there's a lot of pushback in this area because people move from kind of all over the world to live here and be outside of New York City. And it drives the prices of housing and prices in general up for locals. And I know that that's an issue. And it was just comments like that that already made me feel like I wanted to crawl back into my shell, because I already was struggling with feeling out of place and like I should just go back home, to be honest. And getting that pushback from the community feels worse. It feels isolating. And I kind of just had to recognize, even if I'm an outsider, even if, I'm a transplant, I didn't have a choice to move here. And at the end of the day, this is my community too. And it's important that I make effort to give back to the community as well. But I am a part of this community, so I want to feel a sense of belonging. So I started trying to speak to people at the grocery store, speak to people at the gym, be more approachable, go to local events, communities, and kind of see how that went. And that was mostly because I noticed a huge decline in my mental health, knowing that I have nobody to see throughout the day. Like, I am always on the phone with one of my best friends. I'm always on FaceTime. I'm always calling my mom. I am always just talking to the people I already have in my life because I miss them, like I said. But I noticed when I would go out in public, I would try not to be seen, or I would avoid like scanning the room. I'm someone, when I walk into a room, I typically kind of see who's there. I look around and kind of assert my confidence and assert my presence in the room. But I noticed that I was starting to feel uncomfortable living here to the point where when I was out in public at a grocery store or at the gym, I would mind my business to the point of like not even really looking up, trying not to make eye contact, trying not to be in a situation of discomfort, which is the exact thing that I preach against. And I always talk about the importance of embracing the discomfort because that's where growth lies, that's where opportunity lies. But I was so used to just walking around and hoping and praying that nobody would talk to me or nobody would approach me, because I also started to feel like the times where I was getting approached in public was typically feeling almost threatening, like somebody wanted something from me, or a man was making me feel uncomfortable hitting on me or something like that. And so I started to feel like, okay, any interaction I have with a stranger is probably bad or dangerous. I might as well keep to myself and try not to make contact with anyone and just carry on about my business. But like I said, I was starting to notice a decline in my mental health because I had nobody to speak to when I went about my day. And when I started speaking to people in the gym again, and I made a couple different friends in the gym, now I have someone to go say hi to. And now I know them by name, and they're going to question where I've been if I haven't been there for a week or two, or don't show up at the same time I usually go to. Like, there's going to be people wondering where I am now. I also introduced myself one of my favorite coffee shops. I was speaking to the owner, so now I know him by name. And just having that small talk, I always said I hate small talk. I hate it. But the truth is that small talk can be very beneficial for our social confidence. And when you have the ability to just have casual, quick conversation with strangers, it will boost your confidence so much because you know that you can just walk in to an establishment and find some commonality, find something to talk about, and kind of make an acquaintance or somebody who will recognize you by name moving forward. And so, with all of that being said, we have established that knowing people in an area will raise your confidence and change the way you react with the space that you are in. Another example of this, when I was in college, I was a lot more likely to participate in a class if I knew somebody in the class or if I had friends taking it as well. On the other hand, if I knew nobody, even if the class was a discussion based class, I would stay silent. And it was a little bit of just anxiety. But if I knew people or got acquainted with even my table neighbors who weren't necessarily my friends, I was a lot more likely to speak up. And that goes for life. If you are at work and you speak to your coworkers, you know them pretty well, you're more likely to speak up in a meeting. If you feel comfortable, the best way to feel comfortable with a space is acquainting yourself with the people who are often in the space with you as well. On the flip side of this, isolation can have you view yourself as less worthy or have a general lower self-esteem because it reinforces low self-image. I feel like when I feel negatively about myself, I'm likely to isolate myself, and it kind of goes both ways. The more that I feel like I haven't spoken to anybody all day, the more that I feel less confident because I'm like, nobody wants to speak to me, nobody likes me. It reinforces that negative self-talk that you should not be having towards yourself. But beyond confidence, when it comes to community and establishing a sense of belonging, there are also studies done, the correlation between our health and general wellness and how connected we are to others. I found this really interesting because not only does isolation and a lack of a sense of belonging have negative effects on our health and also shorten our life expectancy. You are more likely to die at a younger age if you are not well connected to people, if you don't have a lot of friends or people that you love or a strong sense of community. That's crazy to me. So that really reiterates the importance of establishing community where you are. And there was actually research published in the Connection Prescription that shows us that a lack of connection, isolation, can lead to more symptoms of depression and other negative effects, even mortality. And I can add the full citation in the description if you would like to read up on that study a little bit more in depth. But they even said that connection can be more beneficial than even exercising on our mental health. And if you follow me on TikTok or if you follow this podcast for a while, I talk about how important moving your body is for your mental health and how depression hates a moving target. Everyone says that, and I fully and strongly believe that, but the part that I've been lacking in is my sense of community, and I'm really good at isolating myself because I love my alone time and it's disguised as self-help and taking care of myself, but it can actually start to have negative effects. Um, so I found that very interesting, and they even went so far as to say that connection and exercising. Hold on, sorry. I just glitched out. But on the flip side, isolation can be even more detrimental to your health than if you were to smoke 15 cigarettes a day. That is insane because so many people will turn their nose at the thought of a cigarette because they don't want cancer or the negative health effects that come with smoking cigarettes. But if you are someone who has isolated yourself for years or spend most of your life being isolated, it can be worse for your health than if you were to just smoke a pack a day. So do with that what you will. I am not condoning smoking cigarettes. I am just putting this in perspective for you, how important it is to have people to talk to and feel connected to others. This is also why loved one visits are so important for people in inpatient treatment centers or jail, imprisoned, in the hospital. They always do loved one visits because they were saying that after someone who has more visits with loved ones or have more people coming to see them are more likely to start doing better and getting healthier sooner in the hospital, or they have more motivation if they're in prison to get their act together. Same thing with inpatient facilities for, mental health causes or rehab. They are more motivated to do better, or they start to see an increase in their recovery. They start recovering quicker or show less signs of depression or for whatever facility they were involved in the first place. Same thing with support groups. That's why they are so beneficial, like Alcoholics Anonymous. That's why those work, is because now you have community that you relate to and can talk to, and there's a sense of accountability, and it removes the shame from the addiction by kind of painting it out there and not carrying it within you so harshly. So those are really cool facts, and it makes sense if you think about it. Those with closer social ties are more likely to live longer, even if they have worse health habits than those who do not have many social ties. That's basically what I said a minute ago about smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But there are studies done on this fact, and I suggest you read up on that a little bit if you're interested in that. And as I was kind of doing this bit of research and really diving into isolation and the loneliness epidemic and all of that, I was thinking about our culture in America and how we live in such an individualistic society. Everyone is out for themselves, everyone is selfish. It's a car dependent society for the most part, depending on what city you live in. But we are kind of missing the importance of connecting with others around us. Even so much is that people isolate themselves on purpose, and it seems as though everyone is out for themselves. And this is what I'm talking about. And I feel like we even noticed a huge turn during the pandemic and after effects of the pandemic is everyone was taught in the media to be scared of other people and not talk to other people and not get too close to others. And I feel like we kind of took that and ran with it beyond the pandemic. Whereas now, especially in children, they have a harder time in social settings than people who grew up without experiencing a pandemic the way that that generation did. But on the reverse, it's been getting spoken about a lot more that our generation feels starved for connection and a sense of belonging. The majority of us struggle to make or maintain friendships due to how we are culturally. And I think with social media as well, it's kind of misplaced the need for connection in a real sense because you can build a community on the internet pretty easily. Like on TikTok, I have my little community where we comment back and forth and we like each other's posts and we share them. And I feel like they're my friends. But you kind of create a false sense of community on social media, and it's easy to mistake that for real community and real friendships and a real sense of belonging. And it's important that you find a way to balance the both. So how we are culturally and kind of how do we get past that? What can you do to feel more grounded in your community? I think those who struggle with depression were a lot much more able to lower their risk of depression relapse by 64% after joining 3 different types of social groups. This is what the study was saying, was that people who joined 3 like community-based groups, things that they were interested in, lowered the chance of their depression relapse by 64%, which goes to show maybe you need to join some local groups near you and get more involved in your community. So I want to dive into what these groups could look like. If you're in school, perhaps, maybe you should join some groups that the school has that you find interesting, or a sport. When I was in high school, I was in mock trial, I was in a philosophy club, I did a couple different sports, nothing really stuck, but I had people I met with each week that we had a shared interest and we would talk, and if I wasn't there for a meeting, they would ask me where I was. If you're not in school, you can see what communities you can join, like a church community. Maybe you're into running, a run club. They also have walk clubs. I don't know if they have that sort of thing in every city, but where I live, there's like hot girl walk club or whatever. Maybe something like that. Maybe there's an intramural or just a fun sport. Especially in the summer months, I know pickleball was taking off in a lot of different cities, and there's random little pickleball groups you can join. Look on Facebook or Eventbrite or Meetup. Sometimes there's remote groups. I joined like a remote writing group where we all met on Zoom and we talked about writing every week, and we would know each other by name and kind of know each other's life a little bit. Or maybe there's groups at your local library. Maybe there's a bulletin board somewhere. Maybe there's just local events like the farmers market every Sunday. Maybe you go and you talk to the vendors. You never know when you are receptive to connection, what sort of community is actually right in front of you. You never know what you could potentially get involved in if you just speak to the people who live near you. There's a bunch of stuff maybe you don't know about. I was talking to some girl who lives in this neighborhood, and she was telling me about a pickleball club. Um, you never know. There was this girl I also met that lives over here talking about how she would play volleyball somewhere. I don't even know where she was playing volleyball, but there was different groups I learned about, and I wouldn't have learned about them had I not started speaking to people around me. So I encourage you to step out of your comfort zone and find community, because every city has some form of community that you can tap into. Maybe there's fitness classes that you're really into and you go to the same yoga class or Pilates class or HIIT class every single week. Maybe there's trivia night at your local coffee shop or brewery or pub that you go to every week and you meet the locals. Maybe there's a craft group like knitting or scrapbooking, sewing. There's all sorts of random stuff you can get involved in, and that will raise your quality of life and make you feel more grounded to where you are. It will not only give you a sense of accountability, but will also provide the sense of belonging that you may be craving. This is why smaller cities or more compact cities have a higher sense of community and likely have better rates of mental health. I hear about that all the time, especially like European cities that are walkable, and the way the infrastructure is, it's almost built like a circle in a lot of European cities. If you look at the map, like Paris, it looks like a circle, and then like lines come, I guess it almost looks like a flower. And a lot of different, like Brussels has a city center. A lot of different cities have like a main city center, and they have lower rates of depression and a higher overall rates of mental health in those cities. And if you can find a city that you want to move to that supports that, then do that. But sometimes you have to kind of create that community from where you're at. And also, what I was thinking about is that colder and more car reliant cities much more likely to have higher rates of depression, because all the people that live there are a lot less subject to social interaction. Social interaction is so important. And I've definitely learned that the hard way. And also, based on the average household size in the US, the increase in single member households show that people who live in the United States are growing increasingly more isolated, leading to higher rates of depression. So there's a correlation. There's more people living alone, higher rates of depression. People are self-isolating, and I feel like the biggest problem currently in the United States is the lack of infrastructure to support this social interaction. Like I said, in other countries, the infrastructure supports it. A lot of American cities are car reliant. You're not speaking to people on public transportation. You're not getting to know people on your commutes. You're not going to the city center and hearing live music play. There's not as many community events. So maybe you need to go on Eventbrite or Meetup, or maybe you need to create the community. But it's out there, and I feel like you have to step outside of your comfort zone. You have to find a way to create community, even if you don't feel it off the bat. And there are ways that you can harness a sense of belonging within your community with maybe a little bit more effort and an okayness with discomfort in general. I hope this advice helped, and I hope the study that I talked about and the research that I did interested you a little bit about the importance of social interaction and how damaging it can be to isolate yourself. And I hope you take something from this. And until the next episode of Reinvent and Rediscover, live passionately. Bye.